Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called ISP Compensation. This is during the height of 2020, when my roommate and I are both working from home. Being a techie myself, I can stand it when my tech doesn't work. But our ISP is pretty mediocre at best, and I've gotten used to 1 to 2 small to medium internet outages per month. Nobody else services our area, so no big deal. I have other ways of getting internet, like my phone. One particularly egregious month, there were many more outages than usual, some of which were 6 or more hours. Nothing I can do about it. Oh well. But my roommate? They start demanding that we get compensation for the lost time. We pay a certain amount of money per month, and they need to take this lost time off our bill, which we split. To their credit, they were very good at saving money, but I tried to dissuade them. It's not worth it. The time isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. ISPs are notorious for these sorts of shenanigans. It's not a business line, so they don't have an SLA. But they won't have it. My name is on the bill, so I need to take care of it. I knew exactly where this was headed. But fine. Enter Malicious Compliance. I spent over an hour on the phone with wait times because of the outage and get a very nice customer support rep. I explain our situation and they agree without question that we should be given compensation for the amount of downtime we've experienced this month. After telling my roommate that we got $1.26 off our bill and that I'd be taking half, so their savings for the month would be 63 cents, they stopped complaining about our internet. The next story is called Little Ring. Quite a few years ago now, in the late 1990s and very early on in my career, I used to work for a company that had customers of certain retail stores manage their finances. My role was as a sort of compliance officer, ensuring that the staff who dealt with customers were following the rules. If they messed it up, it was a big problem and could potentially impact the customer's credit score, result in them defaulting on payments and even end up in court. I took my job pretty seriously. The company was not particularly well run from a management perspective. They'd made a lot of money very quickly and had grown from a handful of people in a garage to a 4-story office building in the CBD within the space of a year and a half. There wasn't a great deal in the way of policy or process framework, so I had to develop a lot of the tools to do my job myself. This involved some programming, a basic system to track what I was doing, link to the extensive rule set, and automate some of the more tedious reporting. It would also track how long I was spending on each task so that I could see which elements I could streamline. Now, I was quite proud of the system and called it Hendrix, as I am a massive Jimi Hendrix fan. It used to play about 5 seconds of the instrumental version of Little Ring when it started up. As I had my own little room, this never used to annoy anyone. I can geek out about that type of stuff. At this point, before corporate IT became rather more rigid, I used to write a lot of my own tools. I was the only person who was using Hendrix, and it was a tool just for me. My manager, the archetypal middle manager, decided that because it allowed you to quickly reference which rules applied to which situation, it should be rolled out to all staff. Now, I had previously considered this, but I argued that I couldn't guarantee that it would be fit for tasks because I designed it for my own use, and I'd need to make some changes first. But he rolled it out anyway, without me even getting a chance to tweak it. He got a Team Player of the Week award for introducing a tool to make life easier for the frontline staff. In his acceptance speech, this was a big rah-rah thing each week for the company. He thanked his manager. I didn't even get a mention. Then, 2 weeks later, he realized that I'd been recording how long I had been working on certain tasks within the program. Now, I'd realized fairly quickly that this part of the program was a little too detailed, and I didn't really care too much about every single task within each incident. So I just used it to record how long I spent on the entire incident, rather than each part of the incident. My manager invited me to a meeting about Hendrix, no details given. I attended, thinking it was going to be a list of requested features, only to find out that the head of HR was there, and I was being given a written warning for falsifying timekeeping. Because each customer interaction was a certain length, My manager had decided that this was what I should be recording, and not how long I was spending listening to, analyzing, checking and reporting on the interaction. Remember, this is a tool that I had designed for my own use, and it was not being used to calculate how much I was being paid or whether I was doing enough work during the day or not. There was nothing in place for that at all. I had not made the records public. He'd found them in a file on the server that only he and I had access to. Nobody else was supposed to even have this tool. I argued this and was told that it wasn't up to me and that I was getting a warning regardless. I got really quite heated and unpleasant, though I got the impression that the head of HR was a little embarrassed about the whole thing. They said, however, that if I wanted to consult a lawyer, I was quite within my rights to do so. It was at this point that I was rather smugly able to state that I could get 2 lawyers there within the hour, as both my parents were practicing, and my mother was, in point of fact, an employment lawyer. Suddenly, there was a completely different attitude from my manager. There was an attempt to roll back the issue and turn it into a suggestion that perhaps I should be a bit more careful with my timekeeping in future. But I was pretty angry at this point. I pointed out that my software had been rolled out to all staff against my wishes. I was told that this wasn't up to me, as it was company intellectual property, until I advised them that I'd written it in my own time, at home, on my own computer. It was plugging into the official government rule set and not the corporate intranet one. I had not confirmed it was fit for general release at all. I had received special dispensation from IT to install it on a single work computer, mine, and I would require them to pay a license fee for anything beyond this. To be fair, this would have been tied up in court for a long time, and I've got no idea whether I'd have been successful, so in the end I relented. If they wanted to use Hendrix, well, I guess they could. I just made sure that Little Ring would play for 1 second longer on startup for every week the software was in use. Then I quit the following Monday and was working for another company by the Monday after that. 3 or 4 months later, I got a phone call from my former manager asking to come fix the problems with my software. He hung up when I quoted him my consultant fees. I don't know why IT wasn't able to figure it out. It was just a setting in a text file, not at all hard to find. A friend who remained in the company tells me they continued to use Hendrix for a whole year. The mornings in the call center were apparently horrifying, with Little Ring playing for around a minute every time someone started their new shift. Sometimes it would play on 20 computers at once, a few seconds apart, on tiny PC speakers that they were unable, due to IT, to mute. The third story is called Award-Winning Write-Up. This story started about 15 years ago. I transitioned out of sports writing into news writing, at a small paper though, so occasionally I'd volunteer to cover a sporting event or two to help out and keep those skills up. I covered 2 events that first year, so not a lot, but one of them was a really good story, so I submitted it to an awards contest the next year, and won. 2 days later, I got written up because I wasn't assigned to the sports department and therefore made our sports writers look bad by beating them for this honor. Flash forward about 3 months. Between layoffs and a person quitting, the entire sports department is gone, and corporate hadn't authorized any hirings. They asked me to cover a few events a week until they replaced the sports staff. I refused, pointing out that I'm not assigned to the sports department. They asked me to transfer to that short term. I said I'd consider it, but would not cover anything off of my newsfeed then, as I wouldn't be assigned to the news. They ended up leaving me in the news department. The last story is called Not Just a Hipster. There's a sardonic joke that women wearing memorabilia like band t-shirts are subject to questions like, "Oh, you like Led Zeppelin? Tell me John Paul Jones' birthday." It's obnoxious gatekeeping and very condescending, which takes us to our scene. Milwaukee, 2013, your typical bar. I went to the bar to order, placing myself next to a guy who looked to be in his late 40s. I was a 22-year-old woman wearing a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer t-shirt. He sighed and said, kind of half directed at me, half just into the universe, "Oh great, another hipster girl wearing a PBR shirt. I mean, I like PBR. Right. Tell me what you even know about Pabst." I know that in 1844, Jacob Bass started a brewery called the Empire Brewery on Chestnut Street. It was taken over by his son Philip Bass and renamed the Philip Bass Brewing Company. Philip's daughter Maria married a steamboat captain, Captain Frederick Pabst, the eventual namesake of the brewery. If you want to hear more, come to Best Place at the Pabst Brewery, the former corporate office for Pabst. We do a Pabst history tour there. I'm one of the tour guides. He just looked annoyed as I paid for my drink and walked off. It's a modest tale of malicious compliance, simply answering the question asked, but it was so satisfying. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and want to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.